They say family knows you best, but sometimes it feels like mine barely knows me at all. My name is Abigail. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm an architect, well, technically an urban planner, but nobody in my family seems to remember that detail. Not that they've ever really asked. The engagement brunch was held at the Hawthorne, a sleek glass-walled venue with velvet chairs, gold place cards, and not one but two Prosecco fountains. Very Elise. My younger sister had always loved a good spectacle, and this was no exception. I showed up early, like always. That's just who I am. On time, prepared, quietly useful. I handed over the gift bag to the planner at the door, fixed a crooked centerpiece, and even helped a caterer who couldn't find the freight elevator. When Elise finally made her grand entrance, all champagne silk and glowing skin, she swept through the room like she owned the air. She kissed both our parents on the cheek, then turned to her fiancé's family, laughing at something his mother said. I stood to the side, sipping cold coffee and watching. Then she spotted me. "Oh, there's my sister," she said, waving her arm like a game show hostess. "This is Abigail. She does drafting or something at a construction office." I blinked. Daniel, the fiancé, smiled politely and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you. So you're, what, like a CAD designer?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. What would have been the point? Not like anyone was listening. I just nodded and shook his hand. Something like that. He didn't recognize me. Of course he didn't. Not with my hair down and out of a blazer. But I recognized him the second I saw him. We'd met 18 months earlier at a zoning board meeting when he pitched his gaudy high-rise for South End, the Prospect Heights Towers. I was the one who'd asked the hard questions, the one who led the vote against it. And now I was his future sister-in-law, standing beside him like some silent footnote in his glossy life. Elise had already moved on, gushing to someone about the table linens. We didn't want to do rose gold, too basic, so we went with champagne metallic, much more elevated. I tried to smile, to fit in, but my stomach was twisting. I used to be the youngest ever chair of Charlotte's Urban Planning Board. I've consulted for 3 major cities. Last month, a feature about me ran in Design South. But none of that mattered to them, not when Elise was the one getting married, the one with the ring, the glow, the Pinterest-worthy brunch. At some point, my mother pulled me aside to comment on my outfit. "Maybe next time wear something a little brighter. You blend into the background, sweetie." "Exactly." Daniel stood up to give a little speech, thanking everyone for coming, praising Elise's vision and taste, and her genuine ability to connect with people. He even cracked a joke about their future home. We're still hoping for that rezoning. Approval. Fingers crossed. The room laughed. I took another sip of my coffee. They didn't know. They didn't remember. I had sat at the head of that table. I had made that decision. I had said no. But none of them saw that version of me. Not Elise, not Daniel, not my parents. To them, I was just the quiet older sister. The one who draws things. The one who blends in. So I smiled, nodded, and let them believe whatever they wanted. The brunch was 2 weeks ago. Since then, no one has mentioned it. Not the introduction, not the zoning joke, not even Daniel's face when I shook his hand. It was like none of it happened. That's how it always goes in my family. Things slide off the surface. No one digs deeper. No one asks. We had dinner at my parents' house the following Sunday, a casual thing. Elise showed up an hour late with her hair still damp from a blowout and a tote full of bridal magazines. She launched straight into talking about cake tastings and a celebrity makeup artist she was manifesting. Daniel just landed a huge client, she said, stabbing her salad with manicured fingers. That's why he's been stressed. I told him, "Baby, if you're going to build Charlotte's skyline, you better enjoy the view." She laughed, expecting us all to laugh with her. We did. I sat across from her, quietly chewing. I was overseeing a multi-phase, multi-million-dollar revitalization project downtown. We were adding green space, affordable housing, flood-resistant infrastructure. It was one of the most ambitious developments Charlotte had seen in a decade. No one asked about it. My dad turned to me at one point. "Still doing those blueprints, kiddo?" I nodded. "Yeah, still doing the blueprints." "That's good, honest work," Uncle Darren chimed in. "None of that flashy stuff. You're the backbone. Quiet folks who keep the wheels turning." I forced a smile. He had no idea I'd been published twice in the Journal of Sustainable Urban Design. No idea I'd won a civic award last year. To him, I was still the family's little sketch artist, fiddling with pencils in the corner. Elise swirled her wine. Abby's always been more technical than creative. She likes rules, doesn't she? I shrugged. Sure, I could feel Maya's eyes on me across the table. She was the only one who knew. My cousin, the only one who ever asked real questions. The only one who actually read the newspaper the day my promotion was announced. Later, when we were clearing plates, she cornered me in the kitchen. Why do you let them say that stuff? Because correcting them would take longer than dinner, I said, drying a dish. But it's not true, she whispered. They're acting like you're still interning somewhere. I know. They'd lose their minds if they found out who you really are. Maybe that's the problem, she leaned against the counter. So what, you're just going to keep letting Elise be the star and pretend you're in the background? I looked out the window where Elise and Daniel were taking selfies in the backyard, lit up like magazine people under string lights. It's easier, I said. For now. Maya didn't push, she just handed me another plate. And I didn't say it out loud, but in that moment, I wasn't just hiding the truth. I was afraid of it. Because being seen and still dismissed, that would hurt worse than being overlooked. So I dried the dish, smiled like always, and stayed in the role they'd written for me. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the call came. I was in the middle of reviewing site renderings for Phase 2 of the South End revitalization. My office was quiet, save for the low hum of the city outside my window. The number on the screen stopped me cold. City Hall. I picked up, already anticipating a zoning appeal or maybe another contractor complaint. Abigail Moore. Hi, Abigail. It's Greg Santos. Deputy Mayor Greg Santos. I straightened in my chair. Good afternoon. He got right to the point. I wanted to speak with you personally before the announcement goes public. I'm retiring next month. My mouth went dry. You're stepping down? That's right. It's been a good run. But it's time. I blinked at the blueprint in front of me, suddenly meaningless. And the mayor, I asked carefully? She's on board, he said. We'd like to recommend you to replace me, as chief planner. The words rang in the silence. For a second, I wasn't sure I'd heard him right. You've led the most significant urban projects in this city for the last 5 years, he continued. Everyone on the council trusts your vision. It's time. I swallowed hard. I'm honored. You've earned it. We'll have a formal swearing in after the council vote. Press will be there. I suggest you prepare a short statement. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. I wasn't one to get emotional about titles, but this one mattered. This was the kind of role that shaped skylines, shaped futures. And still, when the ceremony came a few weeks later, I told no one but Maya. She was the only one standing beside me at the small City Hall podium when the mayor shook my hand and smiled for the cameras. I wore a navy dress and practical heels. No family in sight. No congratulations from mom or dad. No Elise with her Instagram story buzzing in the front row. Later, outside, Maya snapped a photo of me in front of the seal. They should have been here, she said, squinting in the sun. I shrugged. They wouldn't have understood it anyway. They would have clapped, said they were proud. Would they have meant it? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because the truth was, letting them believe the lie had become safer than showing them the truth. Safer than watching them smile politely, nod, and still call me the one who does blueprints. I wasn't hiding anymore, but I wasn't volunteering the story either, not yet. The rehearsal dinner was held on a rooftop downtown, one of those luxury venues with uplighting, floor-to-ceiling glass, and rental plans that cost more than a mortgage payment. It had all the hallmarks of an Elise production, curated, expensive, and designed for Instagram. I showed up 15 minutes early, like always. The elevator doors opened to soft jazz, polished marble floors, and waiters in matching bow ties, offering lemon cocktails on gold trays. Abby, Elise called from across the room, waving a clipboard like she was stage managing a Broadway show. Can you help with something? Of course. She led me to a corner table cluttered with name cards and color-coded charts. The planner double-booked 2 tables. Just fix the seating for the Hayes and Pollock families, and make sure no one allergic to shellfish is near the seafood station. Daniel's cousin has a thing. She didn't wait for an answer, just handed me the folder and moved on to greet arriving guests with a perfect smile. No one asked what I'd been working on. No one mentioned the newspaper article that ran a week earlier. Abigail Moore appointed as chief city planner. I had made the front page of the Observer, a photo of me in front of the South End blueprints taking up half the fold. But apparently, that didn't fit the mood board for the evening. By the time Daniel's best man stood to make a toast, the sky had gone lavender, and the skyline glittered in the distance like a postcard. Everyone was glowing. Elise, most of all. She leaned into Daniel, her white jumpsuit fitted just right. Her hair curled into soft, effortless waves. "I'm so lucky," she said into the mic, eyes wet and practiced. "Not just because I found the love of my life, but because we're building something together, a future, a legacy." Daniel's latest development is about to change Charlotte forever. The room applauded. "And Abby," she turned toward me, raising her glass. "My big sister, still doing site maps and technical things I can't pronounce. She's the practical one." Everyone chuckled politely. I smiled, nodded. Maya leaned over, her voice low. "He doesn't realize who you are, does he?" I glanced toward Daniel, who was laughing at something Elise had whispered in his ear. "Nope," I said. "Not a clue." Maya shook her head. "That's wild. I still can't believe it." "I can," I said quietly, because the truth was, people like Daniel and Elise didn't look for the woman behind the signature on their rejected permit. They looked for leverage, for loopholes, for applause. Daniel didn't remember that zoning meeting, or the final vote. But I did. I remembered how red his face got when we denied the towers. How he argued that Charlotte needed vertical ambition and architectural boldness. How I reminded him that gentrification in the name of aesthetics wasn't progress. It was profit. And now, here I was, adjusting his name card next to his aunt's. Still the practical one, still invisible, at least for now. The sun had just dipped below the skyline when the champagne was poured again. Everyone buzzed from cocktails and compliments. Elise stood near the string quartet, practically glowing under the twinkle lights. Daniel's dad gave a long-winded toast full of golf metaphors. Elise's college roommate followed with something sweet and forgettable. Then Elise stepped forward, tapping her glass gently. "I just want to say a few words," she announced, pausing like she was waiting for camera shutters. "This weekend has been surreal. I feel so lucky." She beamed, hand on Daniel's arm. To have Daniel, to have all of you, to be surrounded by people who believe in us and what we're building. A few murmurs of agreement, polite nods. And honestly, she continued, glancing around, "I'm just grateful we all have our roles. Some of us are dreamers." She squeezed Daniel's arm. "Some of us are doers." She winked at her maid of honor. "And some of us—" Her eyes landed on me. "Well, some of us draw maps." There was laughter. Not mean exactly, but not kind either. "Some people build cities," she said, holding her glass higher. "Others just draw them. Right, Abby?" I felt every face turn toward me, some amused, others awkward, a few curious. Daniel chuckled, then stopped. Slowly, he turned to me, the smile fading. "Wait," he said. "What do you do again?" I set down my glass. "I'm the chief planner for the city of Charlotte." The laughter died instantly. Silence spread like a cold front. Daniel blinked. "Wait, chief planner," I nodded. "I chaired the zoning board when Prospect Heights was under review." The name hit the air like a dropped plate. Daniel paled. "You—" He stared at me. "You shut that down." "Yes," I said. I did. His mouth opened, then closed. I could almost see the memory crawling back. The meeting, the questions, the final vote. "I pitched that project," he said, barely above a whisper. "I know," I said. "You pitched it to me." Elisa's smile had vanished. She looked between us, confused, then panicked. "Wait, what are you talking about?" "She was on the board," Daniel said, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "She was the one who blocked the entire thing. The vote was 4-1. 4-2, I corrected. But yes, I led the dissent." Elise stepped back, her voice sharp. "Are you serious right now?" I didn't answer. "You've just been sitting there, letting us talk about the project, laugh at your job." She blinked. "Why wouldn't you say anything?" "Because no one ever asked," I said, calm and steady. Elisa's face flushed crimson. "You let me introduce you to people like you're a temp or something." You introduced me as the one who does site maps, I said, quoting her exactly. Someone stifled a laugh. Someone else let out a quiet, "Oh, damn." Elise turned on Daniel. "Did you know?" "No," he said quickly. "I had no idea. She looked different." "She didn't say anything. You're telling me," Elise said slowly, "that all this time she's been the one. She's the one who blocked your biggest deal. And you still thought she just drew blueprints?" I said nothing, just stood there. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "That's why she looked familiar." The silence that followed was thick and brittle. I didn't move. I didn't apologize. I just stood in the center of it all, letting the truth settle in. One heavy, perfect beat at a time. For a long time, no one said a word. Elise just stood there, clutching her champagne glass like it might anchor her to the floor. Her mouth hung slightly open, still trying to find a script that fit this scene. The string quartet had stopped playing. One of the waiters froze mid-pour. Finally, my mother spoke. "You're the chief planner?" she asked. Like the words themselves offended her. I nodded. "But how?" she stammered. "I mean, you never said—" "I stopped correcting you," I said, voice even. When no one cared to ask, Uncle Darren cleared his throat awkwardly. "I just told someone last week you did permits or something." "Jesus, Abigail. I'm the youngest chief planner the city's had in over 30 years, I said. I oversee infrastructure for a region of 3 million people. I manage 5 departments. I was profiled in Architect's Journal in February. I wasn't bragging. I was just stating facts. Daniel sat down heavily, like the weight of the realization had pulled him from his feet. "I pitched Prospect Heights to you, and you shut it down." "Yes," I said. He shook his head. "And all this time, you've been Elise's sister." Elise let out a bitter laugh. "This is unreal." "I agree," Maya said. She stepped forward, arms crossed, her chin lifted. "Unreal that not one of you ever bothered to learn what Abigail actually does." "Don't you start," Elise snapped. "No, I will start," Maya said, her voice sharp now. "You all built this version of her that was easier to ignore. Someone small, quiet, technical. And she let you because she knew you'd never handle the truth." My father finally spoke up. "Abigail, honey, why would you hide something like this from your family?" I looked at him. "Because it's easier to be invisible than to be visible and dismissed. You'd already decided what I was." "You misled us," Elise said, the heat rising again. "You humiliated me." "No," I said quietly. "You did that on your own." Her face twisted. "You waited for the perfect moment to drop it. You let me walk into that toast. You wanted this." I held her gaze. "I wanted peace. But you wouldn't stop cutting me down, even when you didn't know how far the fall would go." Daniel stood, still pale. I need a minute." He turned and walked to the edge of the rooftop, hands on his hips, staring out at the skyline I'd helped shape. Elise was still staring at me, eyes burning. "You had to upstage me, now of all times. My wedding weekend, I didn't flinch. You built this narrative, I just stopped playing along." The rooftop felt colder now. Conversations had gone quiet. Plates were untouched, glasses half full. And for once, I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it hang. Let them all sit with it. Let them realize I had been there all along. Not invisible, just ignored. Not small, just underestimated. The knock came the next evening, right around dusk. I had just kicked off my shoes and was halfway through reheating leftover curry when I heard it. 3 firm raps on the apartment door. I peeked through the peephole and blinked. Daniel. I opened the door slowly. He looked different. No gel in his hair, no blazer, just a wrinkled t-shirt. And the kind of posture men get when they're carrying something invisible and heavy. "Hey," he said. "Hi." He scratched the back of his neck. "Can I come in?" Just for a minute. I stepped aside without saying a word. He didn't sit. Just stood in the middle of my living room, like it was sacred ground he didn't quite belong on. "I don't know what I expected," he said finally. "But it wasn't that." I waited. He looked around, then back at me. "You built the board that rejected me. You probably saved the city from one of my worst designs." I let out a small breath. "It was more about what it would have done to the neighborhood." He nodded. "I remember that meeting now. You asked all the questions no one else wanted to. I hated you that day." I smirked. "Likewise." He looked sheepish. I'm not here to make excuses or apologize on Elise's behalf. That's between you two. But I needed to say something. Okay. I respected you at the hearing. I didn't know who you were, but you were sharp, calm, fair. And now knowing everything, it kind of makes me feel like an idiot. I didn't say anything. He exhaled. Elise, she needs to be the most important person in the room, always has. I thought it was just confidence, but lately, he trailed off. I think it's more like fear. I folded my arms. Fear of what? Of being outshined. Of being second. We stood there in silence for a beat. I don't know what's going to happen between us, he said finally. But I needed you to know I see you now. And I'm sorry I didn't before. I nodded once. Thanks for saying that. He turned to leave but paused in the doorway. You're rebuilding this city, he said. That's damn impressive. I didn't smile. But I think he saw the flicker in my eyes anyway. When the door clicked shut behind him, I stood alone in the quiet and realized. This time, someone had finally looked and seen. She showed up on a Thursday. No text, no call. Just the sound of knuckles on wood as I was brushing my teeth and getting ready for work. I opened the door slowly, toothbrush still in hand. Elise, no makeup, no heels. Her hair tied up in a limp knot. Her eyes were puffy, and the only jewelry she wore was her engagement ring, spinning loosely on her finger. Can I come in? She asked softly. I nodded and stepped aside. She hovered near the kitchen counter like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to sit. I motioned toward the bar stool. She slid onto it slowly, like every part of her had deflated. We sat in silence for a minute, the hum of the refrigerator filling the space between us. I don't even know where to start, she said finally, her voice small. I thought I was mad at you, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I'm just embarrassed. I rinsed my toothbrush and leaned against the sink, arms crossed. You said I didn't fit your vibe, she winced. I know, God. I said that to people. I said it out loud. You did, she nodded, looking down at her hands. You always made it look so easy. Like none of it bothered you, like you didn't care if you were included or not. I cared. I know that now. She took a breath. I've always had to work really hard to be noticed. I was the one who had to sparkle, had to make noise to be seen. You didn't. You just did things, accomplished things, important things. I didn't say anything. I wanted her to sit in it. She swallowed. I think somewhere along the way, I decided that if you were everything on paper, then I had to be everything in the spotlight. And if you ever stepped into that light, I'd disappear. Her voice cracked a little, so I made sure you stayed quiet, or small. I didn't do it consciously, but I didn't stop it either. Another pause. I don't blame you for not correcting me, not anymore. I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't performing, not today. She wiped at her cheek quickly. I'm not asking you to fix this. I'm not even sure I deserve to. I needed to say I'm sorry for what I said, for what I didn't say, for acting like you didn't matter. I didn't reply right away. Finally, I asked, would it have mattered if I'd told you the truth? She looked up at me. Probably not, she admitted. Back then, I don't think I could have handled it, but I think I can now. She stood slowly. I am proud of you. I just didn't know how to say it when I needed to most. She didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. But as she walked to the door and paused with her hand on the knob, I saw something in her I hadn't seen in years. Honesty. Not enough to fix things, but maybe enough to start. 3 months later, the air at family gatherings felt different. Not completely transformed, just less hollow. My parents still stumbled when describing what I do. My dad called me city infrastructure something or other at Easter, and my mom still introduced me as our oldest, the quiet one. But when I mentioned an upcoming infrastructure bond project over lunch, my father actually asked a follow-up question, not to mock, not to change the subject. He just asked. At Elise's bridal shower, she gave a brief, awkward toast and thanked the people who hold things together even when no one sees it. She didn't look at me when she said it, but I felt the words land where they were meant to. She still posted a lot, still filtered everything through rose gold and hashtags. But there was less performance in her presence lately. Her wedding photos were understated, her captions simpler. I heard through Maya that she'd started therapy. And when I ran into her at a local coffee shop, she asked, genuinely, about the zoning proposal for the new greenway. We talked for 10 minutes like real sisters. That was new. The biggest shift, though, came in subtle waves. Little things. My aunt asked if I'd read the article about flood zoning in Raleigh. Uncle Darren apologized. Actually apologized. For saying I worked behind the scenes. He said his office building got approved faster because of the process my team implemented. And Maya, always Maya, hosted a barbecue at her place in late spring. That's where it happened. The whole family was gathered in her backyard, eating ribs off paper plates and laughing at some story about Daniel's failed attempt to build IKEA furniture. Maya stood up near the fire pit, drink in hand. She tapped her glass gently. One quick thing before dessert, she said, I just want to say something. The crowd quieted. She turned to me, grinning. To Abigail, the one we overlooked for way too long, the woman who quietly rebuilt half the skyline while we called her a draftsman. Laughter rippled through the circle, this time the right kind. To the real architect of this city, and of her own damn story. Everyone raised their cups, even Elise. I looked around at their faces, some still unsure, others trying, but no longer blind. And for the first time, I didn't shrink. I didn't disappear. I just smiled, raised my glass, and let them see me. Fully, finally.